get my shoes and out the door. 5, I'm alive. 6, 7, 8, feeling great.
Hello everybody, this is Dr. Noah. I'm excited to make you aware of an ebook that we just put together and it's ready for you to download for free. It's called Getting to Goddess, Getting Your Hormones Right, and it can be downloaded at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com/hormones/. In this ebook, you will discover 1. What's in your personal environment that's playing havoc with your hormones? 2. Improving your sleep by hacking your hormones. 3. Teaching you 5 easy solutions to better hormone balance. 4. Share the top 10 supplements and food for hormone health. And 5. Discuss the big 3. Estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Hormones and the balancing of hormones are top of mind these days, and this ebook will help you gain control of your health and wellness. This ebook is free and can be downloaded at this link, www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com/hormones/. Enjoy the upcoming podcast. Hello, BYWG tribe. This is Dr. Noah. We wanted to make you aware of our carefully selected book, product, and supplement of the month for July 2019. Yes, the summer is here. Keep in mind, all the links, discount codes, and special offers for the product, book, and supplement will be listed in the show notes in iTunes, posted on social media, in our weekly newsletter, and on our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com at the Listen Now tab. Let's start with free bacon for life. And this offer is only good until July 7th. We've been huge fans of ButcherBox for years. In fact, you can listen to me interview the CEO, Mike Salguro, in the podcast archives. Personally, I look forward to my box of grass-fed meats every month. I get the beef, pork, and chicken combo box and regularly take advantage of their specials, like the one being offered now. Until July 7th, as I mentioned, ButcherBox has created a special offer for all our listeners who are new ButcherBox customers. Free bacon for life. The link to take advantage of this awesome offer is below. If you missed this and you're listening to this later, don't worry, we still have another offer. From July 8th to the end of the month, using this code, www.butcherbox.com/beyondyourwildestgenes/, for new customers, you are eligible for free shipping, free bacon, and $20 off your first box. We collectively love grass-fed beef, organic chicken, wild-caught fish, and heritage pork, especially in the form of bacon. Our July supplement of the month is BYWGs Turmeric Boost. Turmeric has been in the news for its surprising effectiveness to manage inflammatory issues and arthritic pain. However, not all turmeric supplementation is the same. Turmeric Boost contains BCM95, which is a patented form of whole turmeric that helps to address the absorption issues by providing a trademarked formula with 700 to 900% better absorption in human clinical trials. In addition, it doesn't require black pepper to be absorbed, which can be a sensitivity for many people. We also added MCT oil to BYWG's Nutrition's Turmeric Boost, which is a fat that encourages even better absorption. Once again, and as always, no fillers, no wheat, no gluten, no dairy, just value, quality, and effectiveness. For the entire month of July, if you use this code, and it's case sensitive, capital JULY, capital TURMERIC, you will receive 10% off this incredible anti-inflammatory aid. You can pick it up at our office or at our website, of course, and delivered anywhere in the United States at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com. Lastly, but not least, our book of the month is Girl, Stop Apologizing, a Shame-Free Approach for Embracing and Achieving Your Goals by Rachel Hollis. The link to purchase this book is below as well. Be awesome and never unawesome, and enjoy the upcoming podcast. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Noah and Dr. Mike, 2/3 of your BYWG team. This is one of my favorite recordings of the month. In this podcast release, we'll take an in-depth look at one of our premium supplements in our BYWG nutrition line, Turmeric Boost. We are so happy with this supplement and its anti-inflammatory properties it holds. We chose it to be the July 2019 supplement of the month. Just so you have it handy while we go through all the specs, the 10% discount code for the month of July is, and it's case sensitive, it's capital J, lowercase uly, capital T, lowercase urmeric. You can purchase it online or at our website at www.beyondyourwildestgenes.com, or if you're local, you could pick it up in the office as well.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Beyond Your Wildest Genes podcast. I'm your co-host today, Dr. Mike Akinfor. I'm thrilled to have with me on the line Dr. Mark Bubbs. Mark, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come on, considering you are actually an entire continent away across the pond, so to speak. I'm going to read Mark's bio real quick, and then we're going to get into his new book, Peak, the new science of athletic performance that is revolutionizing sports. Dr. Mark Bubbs, ND, CISSN, and CSCS, is the performance nutrition lead for the Canadian men's national basketball team and consults with professional sports teams in the NBA and NFL. He is a former strength and conditioning coach, a regular speaker at conferences across the U.S., Canada, and Europe, and a contributor to Breaking Muscle and Strong magazine. He's also the host of the Dr. Bubbs Performance Podcast, connecting listeners with world experts in nutrition, training, functional health, and mental performance. He is the author of Peak, the new science of athletic performance that is revolutionizing sports by Chelsea Green Publishing, June 2019. Mark, welcome to the show.
Fantastic. Appreciate you having me on.
So, let's flesh out your background a little bit more. That's really one of the shortest bios that we've ever had.
We get the longer version, but that was a mouthful already.
So tell people how you got here.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people, life circumstances and environment play a big role in shaping career paths and passions. And, for me growing up, played lots of different sports, really enjoyed athletics. And then towards the end of my high school career, was getting constantly sick and run down, and no one could quite put their finger on what was going on. And some interventions were suggested that were pretty significant around the gut and surgeries, etc. And someone had suggested I go see this person called a naturopath, which I didn't know what the heck that was in the early 90s. And this person changed a few things in my diet, and all of a sudden I was recovering better. These symptoms that I had were going away. And for me, that was the first catalyst into really starting to realize that, what we're eating and how we're moving and, lifestyle factors like even sleep just have this tremendous role in health. And so, did my undergrad at University of British Columbia. And back then they had a really cool program. They still do, but it was pretty novel at the time, called Integrated Sciences. And you could actually, in this program that you applied for, you could take a selection of courses across microbiology, biochemistry, etc., rather than having to kind of specialize into one area. So for me, that was pretty exciting. I was more of a generalist in the sense of how I wanted to help people. And so I took that course and was thinking of getting into medicine. And, lo and behold, unfortunately at that time, and it's changed a little bit today, but probably not as much as we'd like it to, but, observing docs and patients coming in with chronic conditions, prediabetes, hypertension, all these low mood, and nutrition and exercise were just never on the table, right? You only had a 15-minute visit. It's difficult to get into these things, but it was never offered as one of the strategies. And so that's where I decided to take some time off after my undergrad, and that led me into the naturopathic medicine field. And of course, my background in sport and as a strength coach just started to combine those, working with elite athletes and, our athletes at Canada Basketball and a selection of different athletes that I work with myself.
Awesome. Great story, great background. It makes a lot of sense. Where'd you do your naturopathic training?
So I did my naturopathic training in Toronto at the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. And yeah, it's been really cool to see over the years and now decades. For me, athlete health was the big stumbling block for me to be able to perform, not at an elite level, but at a high school elite level. And now we see even at the highest level in performance, whether it's the NBA or Olympic sports, athlete health is now the centerpiece of really helping the best of the best perform. And, that dovetails really nicely for the rest of us now who are just trying to, do our best at work, perform well at home, at work, and, and be happy and in life.
It really does, and I wanted to bring that up. Mark works with elite athletes, but this also absolutely, to echo your words, dovetails into our modern society, and there was so much that we're going to get into in this book that is applicable to me, you, and everyone else out there, not just the elite athlete.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the big themes of the book is having had the great opportunity to be working in high performance sport and to see how these amazing coaches and strength coaches and, work with their athletes over the years. You start to realize their focus is on the fundamentals. It's not what we see on Instagram. It's not the exotic exercise. It's not the one extreme effort. Being an expert in the fundamentals is a common theme. I found across all these different elite athletes and performance staffs, and consistency, right? These are not really sexy things. These are not things that, get people to click online, but those are really some of the big rocks. And it's amazing how, whether you're trying to qualify for Rio or, Tokyo 2020 for the Olympics, or if you're trying to improve your personal best time or lose some weight, those fundamentals apply to all of us.
Across the board. So, I mean, you are a really busy guy. You are presenting. Why write a book? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always trying to see what's out there and connect with people who are the researchers who are doing the work, and not just read their paper, but when you speak to them, having a podcast of my own, it's my chance to ring them up and get the chance to talk about their research, but also get their own personal take on the nuances of what's going on when they do this type of research. And so, the book really came out of a function of always, wanting to learn and also communicating some of these evidence-based messages to, my clients in practice. So in my clinical practice, I see a whole range of clients, right? General public all the way up to your recreational athletes. And then, of course, consulting works with elite and professional athletes. But communicating this information of these fundamentals is something that more and more now with the, it's great to have connectivity and the Instagramification of everything, but there's a lot of noise out there, and it's tough for folks to tread through all that noise to figure out what really is, what really are the fundamentals or the things that are evidence-based and the truths that they can lean on to achieve their goals.
Awesome. All right, so I was in our preamble before getting on the air, I was telling Mark this is really my Bible going forward because it is so comprehensive, and a lot of the books in this space leave out one of the most important things that I see today in my practice and working with athletes as well is mindset, and you bring this to the forefront. And the interesting thing is, so I want to get into this, is the first thing before we talk about mindset. Your first chapter is on sleep. Am I correct? Right?
Correct. Yeah, sleep.
So could you dive into this a little bit and then hit some of the points that you like about it?
I mean, sleep is, in the last decade, obviously the research has really exploded, and it's great to see the knowledge, the awareness across the board, general public, athletes alike. The book chapter, the start of the book opens up with a story about Roger Federer. And for any tennis fans out there, if you just followed, the last major championship there, Wimbledon, in the quarterfinals of Wimbledon, of the 16 semifinalists, 12 of them were over the age of 30. The other 2 were in their late 20s. There was only 2 under the age of 25. And so things like sleep is a huge reason why we're seeing that. Because when it comes to performing your best, right, sleep is the first big pillar for recovery. Right? If you're looking to improve a personal best time, if you're looking to improve body composition and lose weight, if it's cognitive function, across the board, we know that that increasing that sleep time or achieving at least the 7 hours minimum that the National Sleep Foundation recommends, and experts like Dr. Shuri Ma, who her research originally kicked a lot of this off. And this is really fascinating because back in 2010, she's at University of Stanford. She's doing a study on sleep extension. So, helping college athletes sleep more hours. And she wanted to see the benefits for cognition, for cognitive function. But something weird started happening every time her student athletes came in to follow up in the study. They kept telling her that I just had my personal best in a swim, or I just had my best lift in the gym. And over, all of these physical performance metrics were improving. And so after her work in that, originally in the cognitive side, they dovetailed that into work around on the physical performance. So, whether it's basketball players and free throw percentage and 3-point shooting, if it's a tennis player's first serve, sprint times, just across the board. If you're looking for improvements in all these areas, sleep is the first place to go to. And ironically, for most of us, if you have a busy life, it's the first thing you start to cut out a little bit, right? You stay up a little bit later at night to get those extra jobs done, or you get up earlier in the morning. And so it's talking to the, people like Dr. Shona Halson, Australian Institute of Sport, real experts in this recovery field. The big push now is that, athletes are aware and the general public are aware that they need more sleep, but there's still this big hurdle in the way. And the big hurdle is actually doing it, right? It's like, how do we, it's one thing for clients and athletes to nod their head and say, yeah, coach, I know I need more sleep, but no, now we need to go a step further and actually start doing it. And so there's, in the book, we have some of the recommendations from these experts, like adding an extra 30 minutes a week. You can't try to get there all in one shot because it's just going to throw off your routine a little too much. And you probably struggle to fall asleep if you're used to going to bed quite late. Mm-hmm. But all those that low hanging fruit, sleep is the first place to go. And, for men, a lot of men is, 40s, 50s, 60s, low testosterone is a growing concern. And we're medicating more and more men for that symptom. And the quickest way to get your testosterone levels back up is to just simply get more sleep, right? Because stress is one of the greatest ways that you're going to lower testosterone levels. And so, it's too bad we can't charge people for it because maybe they would do it. But the good news is it's free. And so we got to start really prioritizing these things. And again, that's in terms of fundamentals. That's, we call them the big rocks. That's one of the biggest rocks is sleep.
Talk to me a little bit about sleep architecture.
Yeah, this is one where you will often get people who, first off, we have a natural rhythm through our sleep in terms of the stages of sleep. So going from, non-REM through multiple stages, finishing off with your REM sleep. And the REM sleep is where everything you've learned in the day is being sort of synced together and the synergy occurs and, new thoughts and creativity and all these things. And the last big burst happens before you wake up in the morning. And so you'll often get clients who say, well, I have a glass of wine or two at night, but don't worry, doc, it doesn't interfere with my sleep. I feel okay in the morning. Now that's good on one hand, but on the other, if we put you in a sleep lab with some of the top sleep experts and they hooked you up for a polysomnography test, so they put all the electrodes all over your head, you would see a change in your sleep architecture. You would see a decrease in that precious REM sleep. And so, for me with clients and athletes, and we talk about this in the book, things like, alcohol at night. If you're having it every night of the week or multiple nights and you're struggling with, recovery or body composition or performance, you've got to look into that and start pulling that back. Coffee in the afternoon is another one. I'm a huge coffee fan. I don't want to be taking away anybody's vices. It's a fantastic way to get your polyphenols, right? Your antioxidants. 50% of the antioxidants that we get in of the polyphenols in the general population is from tea and coffee consumption. So, we don't necessarily want to always reduce, but, I get clients who come in having 5, 6, 7 espressos or Americanos in a day. So, okay, we got to pull that back a little bit, and particularly if it's in the afternoon, right? Because the half-life of caffeine is going to be anywhere from 6 to 10 hours. And so people mistakenly think that just because they don't feel the effects centrally, so they're not having that stimulated mental effect, that it's not impacting their body peripherally, right? The rest of your body, so to say. And so that means if you're having that 3, 4, 5 p.m. coffee, or for some people it's even after dinner, that again is going to start to interfere with that sleep architecture, and the quality of your sleep is going to be reduced. And so, in the research, when we talk, if we shift this over to elite athletes, studied in Brazil, done on national level competitors, poorer sleep quality was an independent predictor of who was going to, if you're going to win or place in the event that you were in.
Wow.
Right. And so you do need to think about total sleep time, and then sleep quality is the other piece. And, people are familiar now with, cold environment, dark, no noise. But yet again, if you really dig into it, you'll find that people still will admit, oh, actually it is quite noisy on my street, and no, I don't use earplugs. And so again, you've always got to revisit these sort of fundamentals, because, it's what the best athletes do all the time. And for us, we're always going to have little gaps that pop up, and it's easy wins, right? It's stuff that if you can address it, you'd be amazed at how much progress you can get without much effort.
It really is. It's low-hanging fruit. It's one of the things as humans that we all share. And having the ability today to actually track this information is mind-boggling to me, because it opens up, as somebody who is a quasi-scientist, I'm able to look at myself and what the impacts are. And you talk something as simple as a coffee for me after 4 impacts my sleep at 11 to 11:30 at night. It's not as deep, not as much REM sleep. All of those qualities of a good night's sleep basically go out the window because of that little coffee bean.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those easy switches. And the nice part is, even decaffeinated coffee, which is not uncaf, so there is some caffeine in the decaf. I remember I had one client who had a quadruple decaf Americano. I was thinking, wait a minute, are we almost up to a regular cup here? But the nice part with decaf is you do bring on board the polyphenols, but I typically suggest clients try to cut coffee off around noon or 1 o'clock, get into teas or herbal teas or some other type of beverage to be able to support that quality sleep.
Absolutely. So I'm going to leave this up to you. What do you want to? Where do you want to go next in the book? Because there's so many things that we can talk about. I think a great
way to segue here, Mike, is sleep is essential for recovery.
Sure.
And one of the things that we don't think about, or perhaps we don't focus on as much, is the fact that let's say we're trying to improve body composition, right? So you're trying to get leaner.
Yep.
Now, people tend to forget or are not aware that your resting metabolic rate, right? So the amount of calories you burn just being alive, just to pump your heart and ventilate your lungs, that can make up as much as 60 to 70% of all the calories you burn, right?
Yep.
Which is a huge amount. Exercise is 10%. So if you're not recovering, if you're too stressed, if you're not sleeping enough, if you're training very hard and lack recovery, if you're cutting calories particularly extremely, then all of those things start to lower your resting metabolic rate. And so if that big 60% bucket starts to drop quickly, it's going to be very easy for you to remain in this caloric excess, to struggle to lose weight. And you'll often see people who say, well, look, I'm eating less, I'm exercising more, but I'm not getting any leaner. And so, this idea of resting metabolic rate at the highest level we use now with athletes to assess for things like overtraining. Because if you really start to push, overtraining is a bit of a misnomer in the sense that you can still push yourself hard in training, but if you don't allow for the adequate recovery, then over time you're going to lead into these symptoms of, fatigue, inability to maintain effort, low mood, and these what we call overreaching or overtraining symptoms. And so you use that in the best athletes to be able to assess whether they are run down. So for the rest of us, it is a great marker as well. And so for people who are struggling to lose weight, the common mistake they make is just trying to get all those results in 4 or 8 weeks, right? We get seduced by what we see online in terms of these transformations. And, it is sometimes possible, but you've got to remember at the end of a year, 9 out of 10 people are going to regain all the weight they lost. And so we need to take a longer view of the weight loss process. And, in chapter 4 of the book's all about body composition, and we use the metaphor or the story really of bodybuilders, physique competitors, people whose livelihood is spent doing this, and they take 26 weeks to get as lean as they can get. 26 weeks. I mean, that's half a year. And when they achieve that level of leanness, that optimization, on the back end of that, I mean, male bodybuilders will have lower levels of testosterone for 2 months afterwards. Right? So there's always this cost as well to what we're after. And so, the take home message here on the body composition side is for things like sleep, it's going to be a great way to improve recovery and keep the resting metabolic rate high. And when you're trying to get leaner, you've got to make sure you're always trying to lose weight, eating as much as possible, not as little as possible, which sounds ironic, right? You're trying to just have the smallest drop in caloric intake, right? So we're only shooting for about a pound, maybe 2 per week, which again, doesn't wow a lot of people, but it's a bit like your investments, it's like compound interest. You've got to look at it like over the 6 months, a year and whatnot, because if you do it in that way, if you treat it like a marathon rather than a sprint, when you do achieve that 10, 20, maybe 30, depends on the person, pound weight loss, once you achieve it, you can maintain it because you've taken the time to build in all those habits. Your brain's had a chance as well to reset a lot of the hunger cues, right? Because a common thing is once people lose weight, all of a sudden the appetite, the cravings are going to start to go up because the brain is sort of fighting to get back to that set point that you had previously, right?
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that you explode is the myth of protein intake and too much protein intake and kidney damage. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one that's definitely is still around in the medical circles. It's slowly dissipating out. The work of people like Prof. Stu Phillips at McMaster University, his colleague Rob Morton, who I had recently on my podcast, because it's a case of it's almost like the telephone game where the original message gets skewed by the time it comes out the other end, and the issue is around people who have a kidney disease. If they consume too much protein, that's a problem, right? And that can be a significant and serious problem. So then we conflate that by saying, well, if a person with healthy kidneys eats a lot of protein, they could then develop kidney disease. But those are two very different things, right? They're not the same thing at all. And so the work of these experts has shown that you can get all the way up to 3 grams per kilogram body weight per day, which is well over a gram per pound, like 1.5 grams per pound body weight. So unless you'd never get there virtually unless you decided to dedicate yourself to a full-time bodybuilding, and even then it would be tough to get there. And there's no effect on kidney function. And so this is one of those things that gets repeated. And if you are trying to get leaner and lose weight, protein offers a lot of advantages, right? The first one is that it protects lean muscle mass.
Sure.
Right? The bigger caloric drop you have, the more likely you are to lose muscle. And so this is where we can't just use the scale, right? I mean, I work with fighters and gymnasts. We could take 10 pounds off you in 24 hours, but that's going to be water and the glycogen in the muscles and potentially some muscle, right, from this dramatic caloric deficit. So, we need to try to achieve that, that loss by consuming regular amounts of protein. And so typically a good suggestion in the book we aim for, this is work again by Rob Morton, who did the biggest meta-analysis ever done on protein supplementation. And, 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. So if you take your body weight in pounds and divide that by 2.2, if you aim for that per day and divide it as best you can evenly through the day, that's going to set you up really nicely for achieving your best body composition. Because once you get used to taking that in, you don't need to think about it anymore. You've got that intake. You've set your protein intake as a term that we use. And now you can start to turn the dials of carbohydrates and fats and figure out, what works best for you. Always knowing that in terms of principles, if we go up to 30,000 feet, you do need to be in a caloric deficit. So if you can go low fat, you can go low carb, whatever you want to do, you need to get into that deficit. And for some people, they prefer to do that with a low carb approach. For others, with a low fat, it really gets to be personalized at that point. But the protein side of things, if you can nail that down, because you're also then helping with satiety, right? Protein helps in terms of fighting off cravings. It also costs more energy for your body. That's called the thermic effect of food. You burn more calories simply by eating protein. And the last one, which is probably the most important, we tend to forget, like protein brings on board nutrients, right? Micronutrients. Darker cuts of meat, it's like having a multivitamin, right? Iron, B12, selenium, magnesium. We're bringing on board a lot of things that the body needs. And so that's a great first place to start. I know it does get a lot of people hear a lot about protein, but it is that important to really get that nailed down, and then you don't have so many variables to think about, and then you can move on to the other ones to figure out, the best approach for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. And because there's a lot of myths out there about protein and taking in too much protein and assimilating the protein. So I appreciated that again, and it was very easy for folks to get through it as well. So where do you want to head next?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of, if we continue on this sort of sleep being important for recovery, we just talked body composition. One of the themes of the book being this idea of consistency, right? If you can achieve, again, for weight loss, as little as 200 calories less per day is all you need to lose weight. But you need to be consistent with it week after week, month after month. So things like your immune system. So we see now in researching the book, there's a great paper that came out from some experts in exercise immunology that had a great sort of concluding line that said, elite performance is incompatible with poor health, right? If you're frequently run down, if you're frequently tired, if you're frequently sick, it means that you're going to miss days in the gym. It means that you're not going to be as consistent with your nutrition. And at the end of the line, that's a predictor of you not being able to keep up with the competition. And so that idea in the book, we talk immunonutrition. So these, the pillars of how to keep your immune system robust, because if you do lack sleep, if you're really hammering the gas pedal down on the training and you're cutting calories, that's a big stress in the nervous system.
Sure.
Right? And that's going to start to compromise your immune system. And of course, you need two things to get sick. You need to have exposure to the pathogen. And, if you work in an exercise environment, there's going to be people around. If you have little kids at home, there's going to be lots of bugs around. So that exposure to the bacteria, and then this depressed immunity. And so, getting the sleep in order is that first pillar, but this idea of the nutrition for keeping the immune system going. And that's where, again, keeping, we tend to think always of vitamin D and vitamin C and these micronutrients for immunity. And they are important, no doubt, but they're still the smaller buckets. The biggest bucket is still things like your total energy intake, your total daily caloric intake, right? So if you try to lose weight eating the most possible, you keep your immune system feeling pretty good, running pretty well. If you try to lose weight by really dramatically cutting caloric intake, eventually the immune system's going to take a hit. Again, another important one, protein intake. So we already just discussed that, but by achieving that daily intake and getting it in regularly, you also help to support the immune system. And then lastly is carbohydrate intake. And this is one where, it's tricky because if people get success on a certain strategy of eating, let's say low carb diet, which can be great, right? I use low carb diet a lot. It's a great way to eliminate all the processed foods that we tend to see in the environment. But if you're an active person, and this is more the audience who are quite fit but still trying to lose that, 5, 8, 10 pounds, if you're pushing intensity in your training and you're not fueling before or after with carbohydrate to replenish those stores, that's a big stressor on the immune system. And you see this all the time in clients who sort of do well for a period, then all of a sudden they're going to be sick or run down for 2, 3, 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that derails the whole, all the progress. And so that's an important one for listeners, whether you're a client or whether you work with folks of, highlighting that with your, clients or with yourself to say, hey, am I missing these bigger chunks of time? Am I unable to push myself in the gym because I do feel sort of fatigued and tired and run down? Because again, if you can get the nutrition right, and follow those fundamentals of trying to lose weight by eating as much as you can, then you're going to be able to maintain that consistency throughout the months. And then by the end of the year, you've lost that 10, 20, 30 pounds and you've kept it off.
Absolutely. I do want to talk about one of the things that you wrote that I kind of equate with elite athletes and like the executive that's traveling all the time. What do you do with your elite athletes to help them overcome the all the effects of traveling?
Traveling is a good stressor, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So we not only have the stress of, being in the plane, but also the changing of the time zones. And I was recently at the football medicine conference in London, England, and there's some terrific talks by these expert exercise immunologists. And one of them presented a really cool study around the likelihood of getting sick on the plane based on where you're sitting. Right? Because these are the kind of things when you travel with a team, you got to think about where the athletes might get more exposure to pathogens, etc. And so the interesting thing was the window seat of the people who got sick, 40%, right? Increased likelihood. The middle row, 60%. And then the aisle was the most likely, 80%.
Wow.
And so you think, well, geez, why is that? Why is sitting by the aisle? Why would you be more likely there? And the researcher had mentioned that, when you're walking down the plane and you've got to catch your balance a little bit or you don't want to fall over, so you constantly touch the tops of the seats. That's effectively where it's coming from. And so so all this to say, when you're on a plane, you're more likely to catch a cold or flu just because there's going to be, bacteria circulating throughout the cabin. Sure. And so, doing your best to wash your hands regularly. I mean, that's, in the book, that's the huge one that sounds kind of funny because you tell your kids to do it all the time. But if you want to drop your chances of getting sick by almost half, then simply washing your hands frequently throughout the day, every 3 or 4 hours is the best way to do it. You just eliminate the exposure. So that's one thing to think about when you travel. The other piece for clients, and if you're in the US and Canada, that east to west travel when you're going from one coast to the next, that 3 hours, that can start to make a difference. It's always going to be easier to travel west, right? Our circadian rhythm is a little bit longer than 24 hours. And so extending your day tends to be a little bit easier. And so, if you're going east to west, for some folks, if you didn't want to take a little bit of a nap, depending on when you're flying, you could do that in a plane. But you definitely, upon landing, you want to just continue on with your day, right? And so you're going to feel a little bit tired, get to bed. The next morning, different Zeitgebers, things that help to get your body onto a new time zone. Exposure to morning light is one, obviously, but things like coffee, exercise, a morning meal. So all those things are a great way to get yourself used to a time zone. If you're going east, so west to east, that's where you do want to try to avoid taking a nap on the plane, right? You want to try to make it to that time zone so that you can stay up and be able to get yourself set on the new time. And, it's not so bad maybe going from LA to New York, but when you're going longer, if you're LA to London or New York, Toronto to London, that's where it can really start to, when you get up to that 5 to 8 hour time change, that's when it can really start to impact. And, with those types of things, if you do go regularly, then even in the days before, trying to get to bed half an hour earlier is a key one. And the experts will all tell you the day before you travel, make sure you get a decent night's sleep that day. Don't, if you're out late or if you're having, too many glasses of wine and you have a poor night's sleep before you travel, and we know that's going to interrupt sleep quality, then you might be more exposed to getting sick.
Absolutely. It just struck me and I just remembered, Chris Masterjohn is one of the folks that I follow and listen to and respect, and he was talking about the okay amount of alcohol to drink where it's not going to impact your sleep. I think it was a quarter of an ounce. It was such a minute amount. It's almost like you were microdosing the alcohol. Like Okay, so I only drink vodka and tequila, so I should bring a little eyedropper with me and drop it into my mouth because it's a quarter of an ounce. So I do notice though, Mark, that when even if I have a drink during the day on my days off, it still impacts my sleep.
Yeah, I mean, we see,
as well.
when you you mentioned different technologies. I mean, whether you're using like an Oura Ring or something where you can see the heart rate through the night.
Yep.
Typically, if you have one drink, the heart rate only goes up by, 6, 7 beats, maybe 8 beats in the night. But if you have over 2 drinks, you can start to see a rise of 10, 15, sometimes 20 beats in terms of your resting heart rate, which really lets you know that your body's working hard. So that's, that's one to think about. But the last thing, the thing that's interesting about alcohol is the whole community effect, right? Because even in all the research on alcohol, we know that, some camps will say, well, zero alcohol is best. And others will say, well, we got this research that shows that, people who don't drink alcohol don't live any longer. And the big confounder in all this is the social aspect of getting together with friends and having a laugh and sharing stories. And that's the bit that they can't tease out. So, when you have the wine, is it really the wine that provides the benefit, or is it just the fact that now you're interacting with, your friends? And, we see that sort of theme in all these blue zones where people tend to have a drink or two, quite frequently through the week. And it's always with meals and always with other people, right?
Absolutely. And I think I don't know if we'll ever be able to tease out that data from that,
so.
which is funny. So where I know where I'd like to go next. You want to talk about emotions and mindset?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's I don't want to stay on the tennis theme here, maybe, but Serena Williams, obviously a legendary tennis player. I mean, maybe the greatest ever, right? And again, in this last Wimbledon, something that she's done throughout her entire career, you see her at changeovers literally looking down at a notepad that has positive affirmations written on it, positive self-talk. And it's so fundamental. It's so simple, really. And a lot of us think, well, that kind of stuff, you will move up, you will add spin, you will win. It can sound a little bit hokey to some people, so they don't do it. And you think, well, wait a minute, if Serena Williams is the greatest tennis player ever, she's won 23 majors, and she's still doing it. What does that say for the rest of us, right?
Yep.
Because, in researching the book, you have these renowned, the godfather of modern psychology, Albert Ellis, explains how you talk and think about your experiences has a major influence on how you actually perceive them. And so, I think that's a great first place for a lot of us to start is on the positive self-talk side, because inherently our brains tend to defer to negative thoughts, right? Those warnings, that alarm to try to keep us protected from that, evolutionary side of things. So yeah, I think that's a great first place for people to start, because, stress is a huge, 75% of doctors' visits are stress related. And, when you're working long hours through the week, your brain starts to change in areas that are, impacting your emotions. And so you'll start to have more negative thoughts, right? And so that's almost one of the, I'm always trying to get my clients to have another way of assessing stress rather than just asking them. Because a lot of type A's will always tell you they feel great. Athletes will tell you they feel great. But, for some people it might be, well, negative thoughts, how many of those are you having now compared to when you felt good? For some people it's alcohol intake, right? Now you're going through 5 bottles a week instead of 1, And so, or sugar consumption. And sometimes that's a better way of even gauging stress, because now all of a sudden you use that as a proxy, because subjectively we all want to feel like we're coping with it well, when really a lot of times it's like the duck on water. The duck looks good, but feet underneath the water are paddling like crazy to keep it going.
Absolutely. So how do you wrote about it in the book, how do you supercharge your self-talk?
Yeah, I mean, that's where there's different strategies. The one of them is around simply positive self-talk. So having, writing down affirmations is one. So in terms of, journaling has become more popular. You don't even have to have a specific journal. You can even write it in a day timer or just on a piece of paper as you're reading the paper on the way into work. Short positive affirmations like, I am willing fill in the blank.
Yep.
I am resilient, fill in the blank, right?
Sure.
That's a good way to start training up the mind, right? Because the mind's like a muscle, right? It needs this regular stimulus to be sharp on that side. And we see this again all the way up to elite athletes, right? Recently, Lee Westwood at the British Open, so professional golfer, great golfer, in his 40s now, never won a major tournament. He has his girlfriend caddying for him now. And he hasn't played well in the last few years. All of a sudden, he's playing great again. One of the things he said is, I smile and laugh a lot more on the golf course now.
Oh, that's funny.
And how many times do we think of a performance-enhancing effect that's not coming from the gym or what's on your plate, but something as simple as being in, the frame of mind, the mindset, laughing, smiling. And it reminds me of a quote from our sports psychologist, a renowned sports psychologist named Peter Jensen. And he talks about how, people think that we make decisions based on logic, right? But unfortunately, that's not how humans operate, right? 90% of the decisions that you make are based on emotion. And he says that emotion and imagery are what change people. And that when you're young, imagery, when you're a baby and growing up as a toddler, imagery is the first language that we all speak. And it's one of the reasons why marketers, he says, are so successful, because that's the language that they're tapping into, right? The science that they're using on the psychology side. So, that emotional side and how it drives a lot of performance is a really big one. So things like positive self-talk are key. The work from Kristen Neff around self-compassion.
Sure.
It's also, that actually outperforms positive self-talk. But, when I work with clients or athletes, you tend to try to layer these things on. But there's some different, some of the Dr. Neff's work we talk about in the book. One of them is the stopwatch challenge, which is basically, set a timer on your phone or your watch for 3 minutes, close your eyes, and then you repeat a few simple phrases, right? You do that over and over for the 3-minute period, right? This hurts, fill in the blanks. Other people or other athletes are struggling too. Be patient, I'm strong. And again, for some people, I think more so males, I'd say I've seen in my practice than females, but it can be either way. Sometimes find this, too simple or a little hokey to do. But if you just commit to this for a few weeks even, the effects, the trickle-down effects are really significant. And it is amazing how you can start to grab hold of your inner monologue, right?
Yeah.
Because again, we know we're going to always defer to more of those negative thoughts, right? And so it's a great way to do it. And that way, not only performance in the gym, but in outlook and everything else in life as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I am from New Jersey, and what I did, which really helped me, was to negatively reinforce to help get rid of my negative thoughts, was just using a rubber band. And every time I had a negative thought, I would snap that rubber band, and after a while, it really helped.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
And it's n equals 1 kind of experiment, but it helped. I was present and mindful of my negative thoughts, and they are rampant. They are. I think what's the number of negative thoughts to positive thoughts per day? Do you know what that number is? It's like 8 to 1, or it's insane.
Yeah, I mean, it is massive. And, in the book, we talk about the work of a fellow named Marcus Reichel, who discovered what's called the default mode network, which is a little bit of a similar theme of what you're suggesting here, is that, 50% of the time our minds are actually wandering. Mm-hmm. And when they wander about topics about yourself. And the topics about yourself then end up being skewed eightfold to the negative, right? So it's like, it's easy to see why some of these downward spirals can, and it's not I don't mean to be laughing here, but it's easy to see how these things can impact us, right? And all of a sudden, you change someone's mindset, you get them laughing a bit more, all of a sudden the mood's lighter, we can, feel like we can achieve things, and we all need a little bit of that. And unfortunately, we don't have our own team sports psychologist in our own lives, a lot of us, and most of us. So little things, little strategies you can add in, commit to it, be consistent with it. And, you'd be amazed at the progress you can make.
Absolutely. Mark, I'm really cognizant of your time, considering you're in Europe at the moment. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show. What would you like to impart with our audience wrapping this up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, again, the big themes in the book we wanted to get across is what the best of the best are doing. You know, is it the extreme effort? Is it the latest fad? Unfortunately not, or maybe fortunately. You know, it's the fundamentals. You know, the best golfers or tennis players in the world are still working on the fundamentals of their stance or how they toss their serve, right? And not some new fancy racket that they might be after. So become an expert in fundamentals. Be consistent with your efforts. Don't try to lose all the weight in 4 weeks. Spread it out. Give yourself a big window. Paint the picture for 6 or 12 months. There's actually a great strength coach here in the UK that said if you have goals in the gym, right, divide them by 5 because he wants you to take 5 years to get there.
Wow.
That's the shift in mindset that we need. Because when you do that, all of a sudden you only need to get 10 pounds stronger this year, not 50 pounds stronger.
Sure.
Right. And in his research, this is Dr. Dan Cleather, who was on my podcast a few months ago. He showed that if the group starting with lighter weights had more room to move the pendulum as they were working through their progressions and actually had better outcomes at the end. So be an expert in the fundamentals, you know, be consistent. And on the mindset emotion side of things, we got to find a way to kind of smile and laugh a little bit and not take ourselves so seriously. And, you know, I think that's a nice recipe of how the best of the best are doing it to achieve great things. And for the rest of us, it's a pretty good recipe for success as well.
Absolutely. Mark, I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Folks, Mark's book, The New Science of Athletic Performance that is Revolutionizing Sports, is called Peak. It will be in the show notes. Mark, where can people find you in the world?
Yeah, I've got a funny last name, so it's quite easy to find me. You can @ Dr. Bubbs, Bubbs on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The website's drbubbs.com.
Awesome. Thanks again. Folks, if you like what you heard, please go to iTunes, leave a review. Help us help others find the work that we're doing and having great authors on the show like Mark taking their time out and sharing their book babies with us. I greatly appreciate it.
Fantastic, Mike. Thanks again for having me on.
All right. Take care, Mark. Ciao. And that's a wrap. Easy peasy.
Terrific. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it will be not this Monday, but next Monday. We'll send you all the links. Goes out on all the Twitter and all those other things. So
fantastic. Well, listen, have a great weekend, Mike.
You too, Mark.
Enjoy the heat.
Yeah.
Stay cool.
Take care.
All
Bye
right.
now.
Bye-bye.